It all started with a seemingly innocent conversation. We had been sitting at the kitchen table, sipping our morning coffee, the hum of the house around us as I casually mentioned the progress we were making on our retirement savings. I had been working so hard to secure our future, keeping a close eye on our investments, making sure we were set for the future we had always dreamed of. We had talked about it so many times about the life we would live when the years of hard work finally paid off. The last thing I expected was for my wife to drop a bombshell on me. As I spoke, she suddenly grew quiet, her face shadowed with something I couldn't quite place. I could feel the tension building between us, the air in the room thickening with an unspoken heinous. Then, without warning, she said it. I emptied the retirement fund. At first, I thought I had misheard her. The words didn't seem to match the tone of our conversation, the life we had built. I couldn't process what she had just said. "What do you mean you emptied it?" I asked, my voice shaky. She hesitated, then let out a sigh. "I used it to buy gifts. For someone else." The weight of those words hit me like a freight train. My mind reeled. She had taken the money that was supposed to secure our future, our dream of retirement, and spent it on someone else, someone who wasn't me. When I pressed her for more details, it all came spilling out. She had used our hard-earned savings to buy extravagant gifts for her lover, all while I thought we were both on the same page, working toward a common goal. The betrayal, the deception, was more than I could bear. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The life I thought I knew, the one I had worked so hard to build, was suddenly a lie. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do. I just sat there, staring at her in complete shock, trying to make sense of it all. We had been married for over a decade, building a life together, hand in hand. Our love had always felt strong-rooted in shared goals, mutual respect, and a deep understanding of one another, or so I thought. From the beginning, we were a team. We faced challenges together, celebrated successes together, and were committed to building a secure future. We both knew how important it was to plan ahead, especially when it came to our finances. As we started to build our life, we set clear goals, pay off debt, save for a home, and then, when the time was right, build a nest egg for retirement. We talked about it constantly, from our first year together to the more recent late-night discussions about our future. The idea of retirement, to someday being able to relax and enjoy the fruits of our hard work, was always a dream we shared. We had made sacrifices along the way, cutting back on luxuries, sticking to budgets, and putting off certain things we wanted for the sake of our long-term goals. I didn't mind. The thought of securing our future, of having peace of mind as we grew older, was worth it. Our retirement savings had been a point of pride for both of us. We had worked so hard to accumulate that money, a safety net for our later years, something we had always agreed would be our shared priority. It wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the promise we had made to each other. We wanted to ensure that when we retired, we could live comfortably, with no worries about finances. I trusted her completely. We both trusted the plan. At least that's what I thought. We were a team, and I never once questioned the foundation we had built. But when she told me what she had done, I realized that the partnership I thought we had, the trust I believed was unbreakable, had been shattered. In the months before the discovery, I began to notice small changes in her. At first, I tried to dismiss them. Life gets busy, work gets stressful, and sometimes people need a little time to themselves. But as time passed, the shifts became harder to ignore. She seemed distant. There were moments when she would zone out during our conversations, her mind clearly somewhere else. When I asked her about it, she would brush it off, claiming she was just tired or preoccupied with work. But the distance lingered, and it left me feeling like I wasn't a priority anymore. Her focus on her appearance grew more intense, too. She spent more time getting ready before we went out, paying attention to things she hadn't in the past. New clothes, new makeup, even different hairstyles. I didn't mind that she was taking more pride in her appearance, but the sudden, noticeable change left me wondering why it felt so out of place. Then there were the late nights at work. She started coming home later than usual, her energy always off. She'd say she was busy at the office, that the workload had increased. But I started to see the pattern: more time away from home, more distance between us. It wasn't just the late hours. It was the way she spoke about work. It had shifted. She became vague, less engaged with the details, and more focused on projects that seemed to change every time I asked for clarity. I brushed it aside at first, convincing myself it was just the stress of life or the growing demands of her job. But as the weeks went on, the tension between us grew. I began to feel like something wasn't right, like there was something she wasn't telling me. It was as if a wall had started to rise between us, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it felt impossible to overlook. But I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that the woman I trusted, the woman I had spent years building a life with, was pulling away. So I kept pushing the thoughts to the back of my mind, convincing myself that it was just a phase. I couldn't have been more wrong. The discovery came when I checked the bank statements. It wasn't something I had planned to do, but something felt off, and I couldn't shake the nagging feeling. Maybe it was the late nights. Maybe it was the distance between us. Whatever it was, my instincts were screaming at me. So I logged into the account, thinking I'd just take a quick look. What I saw made my stomach drop. My heart sank as I scrolled through the transactions. There were large sums of money, far beyond what we'd ever budgeted for, and they were being withdrawn in strange, almost obsessive patterns. I clicked on one of the entries, and my fingers trembled as I read. Luxury jewelry store, $5,000. My head spun. I kept scrolling, and the amounts only grew. Expensive vacations, fine dining, more extravagant gifts all paid for with the money. That was supposed to secure our future. That's when the truth hit me like a freight train. She had emptied our retirement savings. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt like the world around me had stopped moving, like time had frozen. How could this be happening? How could she betray me like this? The realization hit me harder than anything else. She wasn't spending it on herself, on things we needed. No, she had been spending it on someone else. I felt a rush of anger, of confusion, of heartbreak all at once. My mind raced as I processed the depths of her betrayal. She wasn't just wasting our future for trivial purchases she had been using. Our hard-earned savings to spoil him, the man she had been seeing behind my back. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted her, feeling every ounce of pain and betrayal pour out of me. Why? How could you do this? I demanded. The room felt suffocating, the words burning in my chest. And then she told me the truth. She had been seeing someone else, the truth I had been dreading, the truth that shattered everything we had built. She had used our savings to shower him with gifts, to make him feel special. And in that moment, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had built my life with, was gone. I walked away from that conversation in a haze, my mind still reeling from the words she had just spoken. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching a nightmare unfold. In slow motion, the numbness set in immediately, wrapping itself around my heart and mind like a cold, suffocating fog. I couldn't process it all. The woman I trusted, the woman I had spent over a decade building a life with, had stolen from us and given it to someone else. Someone who wasn't me. The reality of what had happened hit me with brutal force, but it wasn't the shock of her. A fear that hurt the most was the way she had betrayed us. The future we had worked toward together, the dreams we had shared, had been swept away in an instant. All for what? A man who wasn't part of the plan, who wasn't supposed to have a place in our world. I was left with nothing but shattered. Trust, the foundation of our relationship, built over years of commitment, was reduced to nothing. Could I ever look at her the same way again? How could I trust her after she had done something so callous, so cruel with the savings that we had both worked so hard to accumulate for our future? I didn't know who she was anymore. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who had made choices that were completely beyond my comprehension. How could she be the same person who had once promised to build a life together? To share everything? To face the future as partners? The overwhelming realization settled in. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. The betrayal felt too deep, too personal, too final. As I stood there, staring at the wreckage of everything I had believed in, I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't go back to who we were. I'd been changed forever. That night I sat alone, the weight of the situation sinking in deeper with each passing second. The silence in the house was deafening, amplifying the storm of thoughts in my head. I couldn't escape the truth, couldn't escape what had just been shattered in front of me. I had trusted her, believed in her, and yet here I was, alone. Left with nothing but the wreckage of our life together, the tears came. Not just for the loss of money, not just for the financial blow she had dealt us, but for the loss of something, far deeper trust. I had given my heart to this woman, shared everything I had with her, and she had taken it all and used it to betray me. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we had worked for, everything we had built, together? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw everything around me, destroy it all. Anything to release the anger, the hurt, the raw frustration that was eating away at me. I wanted to make her feel what I felt, to make her understand the devastation she had caused. I wanted to break everything that reminded me of the lie I had lived, of the trust I had placed in her. But instead, I just sat there, completely numb, unable to move, unable to stop the tears that kept coming, alone, with only the echo of my pain to keep me company. I broke down. Ow. The weight of the betrayal was too much. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in everything that had been ripped away from me. The love, the future, the trust, it was all gone in an instant. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know how to even begin to pick up the pieces. I was lost in the ruins of a life I thought I understood. All I had left was the broken pieces of my heart and the endless hollow echo of her betrayal. The next morning, I woke up in a house that no longer felt like home. The bed, the walls, the furniture, it all felt foreign now, as if everything had changed overnight. The reality of the situation was still settling in, and I could feel the weight of the betrayal pressing heavily on my chest. It was suffocating. Like a stone lodged deep inside me, impossible to escape. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing, trying to make sense of it all. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what the next step should be. Should I stay? Should I leave? Could I ever trust her again? Could I ever look at her the same way, knowing what she had done? The questions circled in my head, each one more overwhelming than the last. The house, once a place filled with shared memories, laughter and dreams for the future, now felt like a hollow shell. It was a constant reminder of the life I had believed in, and the life that had been ripped away from me. My future had been thrown into chaos. I had worked so hard to build something secure, something lasting. But now, everything was in pieces. I didn't know how to put it back together. I was alone with my thoughts, with my pain, with the overwhelming realization that everything I thought I knew had been a lie. I couldn't escape it. Felt emptier than ever. I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart, trying to figure out where I fit in this new world that no longer made sense. The silence in the house was deafening. It wasn't the comforting silence of peace. It was the silence of something irreparably broken, and I didn't know how to move forward. All I had was the isolation, the cold weight of betrayal, and the uncertainty of what would come next. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just walk away from this, from her not, without getting some kind of explanation, some understanding of how she could betray me so completely. The trust we had shared, the bond we had built over years of marriage, had been shattered in an instant. I needed to confront her. I needed to know why she thought this was okay, why she thought she could destroy everything we had worked for without a second thought. When I confronted her, I felt a rush of emotions, anger, hurt, betrayal all crashing into each other. I walked into the room where she was sitting, the weight of my words hanging in the air. "How could you do this?" I asked, my voice barely holding together. "How could you take our future and spend it on him?" But when she looked up at me, it wasn't guilt, remorse, or even surprise in her eyes. It was something else, coldness. The woman I had known, the woman I had trusted, was gone. She looked at me as if I were just another inconvenience, and the response she gave was enough to freeze the blood in my veins. "It was my money," she said, as if that explained everything. Her tone was dismissive, almost like she was irritated by my questioning. I needed to feel special. Those words hit me like a slap across the face. My money. As if that somehow justified what she had done. As if using our retirement savings on someone else's gifts and vacations was acceptable because it was her money to spend. The sheer coldness of her response stunned me. She wasn't even sorry. She wasn't ashamed. It wasn't about love or loyalty or trust. It was about her own need to feel validated, to feel important. In that moment, the weight of her betrayal sank deeper than ever. She had used our future, our dreams, as a tool for her own selfish desires. And the casualness with which she spoke about it only added to the pain. There was no regret, no apology. Just cold justification. I stood there, frozen, struggling to grasp the reality of what was happening. My heart was breaking, and yet all I could do was stare at her, trying to comprehend the depths of her indifference. It was clear I was talking to a stranger. The road to recovery wasn't easy. In the beginning, it felt like an insurmountable mountain, and I wasn't sure how to even begin climbing. It wasn't about the money anymore. The financial loss felt like a distant second to the emotional devastation I had to process. The true weight of what had happened wasn't just the betrayal of trust. It was the breakdown of everything I had believed in. I realized that healing wasn't just about fixing what had been broken. It was about learning how to move forward, how to rebuild trust in myself, and how to find strength in the aftermath of such a profound loss. The journey started slowly. There were days when the pain felt unbearable, and I didn't know how to face the world, let alone myself. But I knew. I couldn't stay stuck forever. I had to rebuild piece by piece. I leaned on my friends, reaching out to those I hadn't spoken to in a while. They were there for me, offering support and reminding me that I wasn't alone. It wasn't easy to admit how lost I felt, but their presence helped me begin to heal. Their words, their comfort, began to chip away at the isolation I felt. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely disconnected from the world around me. I started focusing on myself, on things I had neglected over the years. I picked up hobbies I had once enjoyed, spent time doing things that made me feel alive again. I went for walks, I started reading more, and I began rediscovering who I was outside of the relationship. I had spent so much of myself in that marriage, in the vision of our life together, that I had forgotten what made me me. Now I was slowly finding pieces of myself that had been buried beneath the pain. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt. It's moments when I thought I'd never feel whole again, but each day was a small victory. I began to see a future that didn't involve her. A future where I was strong on my own, where I could trust myself again, where I could be happy again. The road was long, but with each step I grew stronger. I learned that healing wasn't about forgetting or moving on instantly. It was about reclaiming my life and my sense of self. And with time, I began to see that I had the strength to rebuild my future, a future that was mine to shape. Looking back, I realized that being betrayed was the best thing that ever happened to me. At first, it felt like my world was crumbling, like everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. But over time, I began to understand something important. That moment of betrayal forced me to confront who I had become, the choices I had made, and the way I had allowed my identity to be tied to someone else. It wasn't easy to see it at first, but I now know that it was a turning point. It pushed me to rebuild my life, but this time on my own terms. No longer defined by the mistakes she made, nor by the trust I lost, I began to redefine what mattered. I realized I didn't need anyone to complete me. I was enough on my own. I am not defined by the past, by the betrayal, or by the hurt I experienced. I'm defined by how I choose to move forward. I've learned to value myself again, to understand that I am worthy of love, respect, and trust, not just from others, but from myself. I've learned that I should never settle for a life that doesn't honor my worth. I've come to understand the importance of setting boundaries, of knowing what I deserve, and of not compromising that for anyone or anything. I've moved forward, stronger and more resilient than I ever thought possible. What I once thought would destroy me became the catalyst for my growth. I am no longer the person I was before the betrayal. I am someone who has faced their pain, embraced it, and turned it into something that fuels my strength. And from now on, I will never let anyone take what's mine again. My peace, my trust, my sense of self, those are mine to protect. No one can take that away from me.